All right, so I want to walk through a personal injury that I had. This happened in October of 2023. What happened here, obviously, seated good morning, weight wasn't that crazy, but when I was in that bottom position, I felt something, I don't know, like snap or just like a little twinge in the low back, and it literally took me, like, I think on the phone, it took me like 8 minutes to get from that position to the point where I could get up, stand, hold on to the rack, and walk over to the camera. So it was one where I was like, I had a couple hours where I was like, okay, what did I actually do here? So the process of that rehab. So right after this, I had, like I said, it was very difficult for me to walk, as you can see there. So essentially what happened is I had 2 calls right after this injury, and I had to just like do those calls on my stomach because I couldn't actually sit in a chair. So I had to like kneel on the ground with my stomach on the chair because I couldn't actually sit in the chair because of how much it hurt or what it felt like. And that whole process, or like that whole thing, led me to, again, think or question like, okay, what is it that I did? Is my body going to be able to, come back and rehab from this? Like, my business depends on it. There's a lot of stuff that was going through my head, right? But after those initial 2 calls, I was able to get up, walk a little bit better. It was still very restricted, but I was like, okay, we're going to be able to work back from this. And then from that point on, there was about 2 or 3 days, and this we'll get into like right here, right around this portion here of these clips of what I was doing. There's like 2 to 3 days where I really just tried to move it in a range that didn't hurt, but I was constantly looking for whether it would hurt or not, right? So like I was moving, I was training, but I was looking for where's the twinge going to be, and don't go to that. So instead of dictating how I wanted to move, I was looking for where would it hurt, and then that would dictate how I would move, right? And like 2 to 3 days into that, I kind of had a flip or a switch where I remembered like, okay, do what it is that I tell my athletes to do. And that means I want to be able to actually feel, picture, envision how it is that I want to move. And then I want to actively and aggressively move like that. So it was like this flip that I had where I have to, or not have to, but I'm going to stop looking for how it hurts, where it hurts, stop trying to like almost listen to it too much or be over aware of it, and simply start to move a little bit more aggressively. So this is kind of during that transition period. Obviously, I'm still moving pretty slow, just working on picking some stuff up off the ground. And just for this clip, it's worth mentioning, like, even as I was going through the rehab, I still trained everything as hard as I could outside of that. Like I was biasing the rehab towards the back, and I was regressing that as much as needed, but everything outside of that, like these, for instance, I was still finding ways to train the lower half, to train the rest of the body as hard as I could. So that's worth mentioning as part of this process. But these are where I really started to attempt to get a little bit more aggressive. So I'm not really trying to use my arms here. I'm trying to throw it with the spine, and just trying to feel that impulse, feel that impact going into my spine and energize that area. And remember, really, it's like remember what it's like to create force and impact at a high level with those impulses there for the back, right? To grow confidence in being able to apply force aggressively with it. And they don't look that aggressive, but at the time they felt very aggressive. So we're getting into here. This is probably, this is probably like 2.5 weeks out. Maybe a week and a half at the earliest from that initial injury. And then these were interesting for me because these were the first time where I really started to feel like aggressive with it. And maybe here, let me see if I can, I'm going to turn off the sound so you can hear it. Let's see if we have any. Oops, didn't want to do that. There we go. So you can hear there's a fair amount of just like grunting and aggressiveness with this. And it's not just for the sake of grunting and being aggressive, but it was like that was the process of me remembering to be aggressive with these moves that I was doing. And then I started to build up through these ranges, through these different moves. Specifically, we're talking like hinge and squats here. Like it was these literally felt like if I pushed it in the incorrect way, like I could make it worse or I could do it again. But it's like I had to get aggressive with it. And like the way that I thought about it was the injury that I had, at this point, it was probably 2.5 weeks before. The injury that I had 2.5 weeks before has nothing to do with how my back's feeling right now. So how would I train it if it wasn't from an injury, but this is just how my body felt? And I didn't have to worry about re-injury. And that's what I started to do with these is start to train like that. So that was a real flipping or turning point for me were these, because I started to allow myself to be aggressive with it again. These were some depth drops that I did. It was starting to feel pretty decent at this time. So I just wanted to push it with a little bit of impact, with a little bit of intensity. This is 315. Again, here, let me turn the volume on here. So the point isn't to yell, right? But the feel that I had from that was like doing that allowed me to apply an intensity to it. And it is like if I have my spine, getting into it with more intensity allowed me to kind of like protect that spine as I went through these and move the way that I wanted. So it was like the yelling allowed me to pull myself into present time, to move the way that I wanted and forget about the injury itself and be aggressive with it, right? Versus worrying about that. So that kind of explains that. These were some sprints. I want to say this was maybe 3.5 weeks after, and then this is 405. I remember specifically that this was 4 weeks after the initial injury. I believe it was literally right on like 28 to 30 days, something like that. So it was starting to feel pretty good at that time. Like there's a little bit there, but it was like I was able to kind of use that aggressiveness to get over that. And then these are even a little bit later where I was like, okay, it's feeling pretty damn good. Now we're going to start to introduce, like that's the first time that I did this exercise, I believe. So I was like, now I want to try to introduce some impact in that position in which I injured it. So that seated good morning position and really start to actually train that and be aggressive with it. It's almost more like, I don't want to say prehab, it's just training, but it's like that position was something that I was weak in, so I wanted to address it. And then here's working back up in the deadlift. This is probably, I don't know, five weeks out, maybe a little bit longer, and then squats as well. So at this point, it was feeling pretty good. But that's the general process that I went through, and I just want to kind of show that and be like, I wasn't fully confident all the time. It didn't go smoothly all the time. Like there was little tweaks right at the start, and I had to remember kind of how to attack it. But as it got rolling and as it got going, it progressed pretty quickly into these here were probably like 5 or 6 weeks out from what could have been a fairly serious injury. I don't know exactly what it was. I never got an MRI done, but I mean just that initial getting up, like I said, took 8 to 10 minutes. So I'm very happy with how it bounced back and just want to show you guys a little bit of what that process was like.